Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Phantom Perspectives. I'm recording this episode kind of early in the morning. Not early as like the prologue, but still pretty early, so that's why I'm still in my pajamas. And I know this is a shirt I wear regularly, but the pants are really the only thing that stay pajamas. The shirts are interchangeable. The shirts are interchangeable, but you're not interested in that. But we're here to talk about Danny Phantom, and today we're going to be discussing episode 10 of Danny Phantom, Shades of Grey. And this is an episode that actually expands on a kind of minor background character. I mentioned this character briefly in the parental bonding episode, but in this case, it's a girl named Valerie, and she's one of the popular girls. She's friends with Paulina, Dash, and I forgot the other guy's name. And pretty much what's going on is that Danny, her dad, we see that the reason she has so much money is because her dad works security at a company called Axiom or Axion, I think. He usually makes good money, and as such, it's through his money that she's able to buy all her expensive junk, like an expensive a T-shirt that she now owns, like a T-shirt she now owns that winds up getting stained with coffee when Danny accidentally runs into her boyfriend. Well, in this case, unfortunately, Danny ends up fighting a ghost dog, which seems to be running all over the place, and unfortunately runs right into Axion's office while her dad is showing off all the. Okay, I do not like that right there. Sorry, sunlight make my face glow. I don't like that. But pretty much they run in while her dad is trying to show off some of his new security, but unfortunately, none of it's actually good at catching ghosts. So they wreck the entire place and her dad gets fired. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, I think that should work out for now. Anyway, like I was saying, okay, I'm probably going to be sitting over here, so I'm sorry I'm not centered anymore, because I need some light and I can't just sit over here, or else, yeah, my face glows. But anyway, so I'm going to be sitting off center, but anyway, as I was saying, her dad gets fired from his job. Now, and unfortunately, he doesn't exactly. They kind of needed that money to help pay for all their expensive stuff, so unfortunately, they begin selling most of their stuff, and it just keeps getting worse and worse as Danny has to keep fighting off this ghost dog. As just little by little, as every time they fight, something of hers gets ruined or destroyed or whatever, and she's just getting angrier and angrier, especially when when all the popular kids just start making fun of her and shunning her because she's now poor and she can't afford all the expensive stuff that they like doing, including having tickets to go to a concert for a band called Dumpty Humpty. Don't know why you name your band that, but whatever. I'm not playing a band, so I don't know. But just pretty much as time keeps going on, she just keeps getting angrier and angrier, and all that anger is being funneled towards Danny and the ghost dog. Until when she and her dad move into a cheaper apartment, and her dad goes out because the Axion's giving him a second opportunity to work there as a regular security guard. She apparently gets a package from Wisconsin, and yeah. The episode just clearly shows it's Vlad that sent this. As she opens it up, he's there, and it turns out that the bot, and he's taking advantage of her emotional state to pretty much make her a weapon to use against Danny. In this case, what he sent her is gear specifically tailored to catch ghosts, like a jumpsuit, a helmet, lasers, a flying hoverboard that she can use that she can fly on. Pretty much all this stuff that's used to catch ghosts, and when she knows how to get it, she just goes to town, as every time Danny is working with the ghost dog, as every time he encounters it, he starts building up trust with it to the point where he's actually starting to train it. But unfortunately, Valerie keeps coming in and blasting at them because she just absolutely blames Danny for ruining her life, pretty much, and it gets worse. She pretty much doesn't just blame Danny, she blames all ghosts. If you're a ghost now, she just wants you gone, kaput, dead. and unfortunately that's and unfortunately to make matters worse, it as was shown a bit in Parental Bonding, Tucker kind of has the hots for her, and so he keeps trying to warm up to her. She's still kind of in the mindset of Bally popular girl, so she doesn't want to hang out with the losers, which are Danny, Sam, and Tucker. So she still doesn't want to hang out with him. But then when she learns that Danny's parents are ghost catchers or ghost hunters, suddenly she is a little bit more interested. So she tries hanging out with them little by little, but but Danny does not want Tucker hanging out with her because, well, she's trying to kill him. Well, eventually they manage to fake. Well, eventually, it all kind of comes to a head when Danny manages to find out. We realize that the dog is going around going nuts because it's searching for something. And when they actually go, and it turns out that that thing is an Axion, which of course, and at that which they know is not a good idea, especially since Valerie's dad is the one doing security, and Danny actually does feel guilty for kind of sort of ruining her life. As such, they decided they need to find some way to get in there without causing much of a commotion. So Danny used the Fenton ghost line, the thing he used to catch the dragon in Parental Bonding, to try and leash the dog to a tree. And he flies into Axion anyway while Valerie's dad is going out to get lunch because he brought Valerie with him. But the instant Danny goes in, Valerie attacks Danny, and their fighting causes the security to go off, especially once the dog hears all the commotion, it comes running in. Again, because it likes Danny, so. But in the battle with Valerie, Danny gets blasted into the room, and something that they kind of mention offhand a couple times in the episode is that Axion used to have security dogs, but they got rid of them. But they wound up getting rid of them, and so when Danny winds up going into a cat, which I suppose the idea is that this thing is a ghost of one of the dogs, and I know you could say it's probably a dog from the Ghost Zone, but there's evidence that kind of goes that supports that. Like, for example, its collar actually has an Axion, the symbol for Axion on it. So that means it probably was there from Axion. And on top of that, we learn what it's actually looking for. It's Chew Toy. As the room that Danny gets blasted into is where they kept all the guard dogs. It's full of kennels and so forth. But when Danny starts looking around, he finds the Chew Toy, and it turns out that's exactly what the dog was looking for. It just wanted its Chew Toy back. Okay, hold on a second. I'm gonna move this over slightly. Yeah, can't control the movement of the sun, so might maybe moving over a little bit every now and then. I'm sorry, I don't like having technical difficulties in these things. Anyway, but pretty much and Danny managed to get the Chew Toy to the dog just in time as it looks like it's about to eat Valerie, but he throws it to her, and it calms down enough, and now that it's got what it's wanted, it just fades away and disappears. At this point, Danny just wants to help Valerie get back up and tries to tell her, look, that dog isn't mine. I'm sorry what I did, but not all ghosts are evil. But at this point, Valerie just doesn't care. She doesn't want to hear any of it, and she just absolutely hates Danny, and she thinks that him saying that stuff is just him trying to fool her as she gets ready to blast him. But at that point, her dad and his boss come, and so Danny takes that opportunity to run away, but as I mentioned, the dog still came charging in, and the thing is, Danny tied the ghost line to a tree which Sam and Tucker were in, and when it ran away, it wound up pulling the tree right out of the ground. So Sam and Tucker came with it. So Tucker sees that Valerie's about to get caught, so he intentionally runs in and gets caught to make it look like he was the security breach. And that Valerie's dad is fine, and so the episode. And what I kind of find is that the episode doesn't really have finality, so to speak. Like the other episodes, to a degree, with maybe the exception of the Bitter Reunions episode, usually involve the enemy of the episode being defeated. And while in this case the ghost dog was defeated, Valerie is still around. One of the bigger threat of the episode was Valerie and how all the events of the episode affected her, and Danny doesn't get through to her in this episode. She stays she's still angry. She still blames Danny, and Danny still wants to know Danny still doesn't know that Vlad is the one that's applied her with gear. And to make it even worse, and on top of that, and she's just it's a continuing thing throughout the episode. And on top of that, something that's positive about it the fact that she becomes poor actually kind of gives her some perspective on Danny and her Danny and his friends. But I'll get back to that in a minute when I'm done with the summary. And pretty much as everything is going down, it turns out that as such, they're wondering, well, what can they do? Well, Sam says she doesn't know, but she knows how she was able to pay for rent and so forth. And it turns out Sam was the one that bought her tickets, and so they are the ones rocking out to at the concert at the end of the episode. So they're at least having happy endings. So, well, on the whole, what do I think of the episode? Admittedly, I think it's pretty good. Not great, I openly admit, but I think it's pretty good. I think one of the bigger problem, I think one of the reasons why I don't think it's great is admittedly personal bias. This is just how I feel, and it's mostly because of my thoughts on superheroes and so forth. Because the show's called Danny Phantom, and most of the stuff involves superpowers or ghost powers, how suddenly this character who wants to fight ghosts, who doesn't really have any power, so to speak, and just has gear, and I think it's not that good. I just kind of look at it and think, she's alright, I think. Not great, but alright. And I know you can say, like, well, Batman doesn't have powers and so forth, and he's a superhero. Well, the difference is Batman is a superhero. She's a person in gear. But that's just my personal bias, I will openly admit. It's nothing great, and even with that bias, I do see what this episode was going for with her, and I think it works. In this case, you take a minor character, a background character whose only intent was to be like the traditional Valley girl, and yeah, she's so rich, everyone likes her. Well, in this case, it kind of helps show that there are sometimes victims that are caught in the middle of everything. Like something that they don't usually that they sometimes focus on in superhero shows, and that they seem to be doing here, is that sometimes when superheroes are doing their thing and fighting supervillains and so forth, people can be caught in the middle. That's not, and they don't always mean to, and they don't. It's not like they're trying to hurt people, but when they fight these things, sometimes there is collateral damage, and people can get hurt, and sometimes their lives can be ruined. Like we saw that a little bit, we saw that a little bit in Captain America: Civil War with their version of Baron Zemo, how he was just a guy caught in the crossfire and how that affected him. In this case, it's with Valerie. She was essentially the same Valley Girl stereotype that you would expect, but thanks to Danny and the ghost dog, her life just began to fall apart little by little. So you start to see that anger and hate start to fester and grow as she just little by little winds up little by little she starts to get angrier and angrier. Just everything that she cared about in her life is just slowly taken away from her, and it all comes back to Danny Danny trying to stop this dog. She's just caught in the middle, and as such, the idea and seeing Vlad take advantage of that to try and create a means to try and take Danny down is really interesting, and it's really interesting. And what I also like is that it is sort of a gray area in that regard. Like, she's not a bad person. In fact, from her perspective, these ghosts are dangerous in some regard, and she's not. And it's not like and while it is somewhat a little selfish, she does genuinely believe that she needs to stop these things the same way Danny wants to stop it. The problem is though that because of her personal experiences with Danny and this ghost dog, she just doesn't trust them. She doesn't trust any of them. It's one of those absolutes. It's, in other words, a hatred of absolutes. She just does, like, she sees the ghosts. These are the only two she knows, and it's pretty much she sees them as dangerous, and so she just doesn't trust them. As such, even when Danny tries to offer her hand in friendship, she doesn't take it, which is a little interesting, and it does keep it open-ended, as you see. But on top of that, but again, that's where the gray area comes in. She's not a bad guy. She just doesn't fully understand, and it gets kind of work. And it kind of even gets, and on top of that, in her social circles, it also kind of leads to character development. Just little by little. I think throughout the series, she just gets more character development because of this. And one of the first things is when she learns that the people she thought were her friends aren't treating her like a friend. Like when she tells them that they're like, there's a scene where they're all just cheering like, yeah, we're going to Dumpty Humpty, yeah, Valerie, what about you? But then they all have all these lunches, but all she can afford is a bag lunch. And she says, I'm sorry, I had to sell my tickets. And immediately they just start making fun of her and saying that she's not, and saying, we'll make sure you don't sit next to some losers, and they're just laughing at her. And it's just douchey. And it leads to her realizing that these people aren't her friends. Even at the end of the episode, and on top, but the only, and yet, and okay, and again, it's not like she fully realizes, oh, you guys are all right. No, again, it's just kind of a gray area too. Like, she still has these biases and stereotypes regarding Danny. Okay, moving this over again. Sorry, I keep doing this, but I really need to stay out of the sunlight because this is not, because I do not want my face to glow. But again, it's just kind of a bit of a gray area. And again, like I was saying, she doesn't fully let go of the stereotypes she held towards Danny and his friends. But there is a start, especially when they're the ones that actually try giving her the time of day. And while she does blow them off, I think just you can see that there's a start. Not a full thing, which is another thing I like about the episode. Nothing is fully wrapped. Like I said, it doesn't have finality. Nothing is wrapped up. Valerie, the only thing that's wrapped up is what the dog was after, and that was it. But the consequences of that are still around. Valerie's dad, despite the fact that that Tucker was able to cover up what had happened, is still on thin ice. Valerie still hates Danny and all ghosts. And while there's a start to her character development, it's not fully expanded. It's just that, a start. She still kind of holds on. She still kind of has those biases that she had towards Danny and his friends, but at the same time, she doesn't like that. She does not like Dash or any of her former friends anymore. She just holds her nose up at them, which again is kind of nice. It's the beginning of an arc for her. It's just kind of beginning of how change, which I find interesting. Which, yeah, it really does, and again, it kind of helps fit into what the name of the episode is: a shade of gray. She's not a bad guy, but she's not an ally either. She's just kind of her own thing, and just as the series goes on, we see more of that development come through, which I think is really nice. I think that really is good. There really is potential there, and she becomes more than just a background character or just a generic bully. She actually does become more of a character. She has her own arcs because of this episode, and it all starts here. And again, while my opinion may be dampened a little because of my own personal biases, I still can see the charm in this episode, and it really does work with Valerie. On top of that, I do kind of like seeing the dog because I'm a dog person. If you've seen the Alien Force retrospectives, you know about Xander, but pretty much, or just anyway, sorry. But I just kind of like seeing Danny interacting with a dog, and just little by little seeing that while it is an anger, it kind of makes sense. If we're going by that it's the spirit of one of the former guard dogs, it would make sense why it can be brutal. It's a guard dog. It was trained. Odds are it's been trained to be brutal, except towards those that it deems friendly. And in this case, at first it deems Danny as just an unfriendly, but little by little as everything goes on, it's actually starts liking him, and actually it's one of the few people that it actually gets calm for. Like, that's the thing with the dog. It has two states. Like, first it's like a cute little puppy that's just like all happy and just yipping, and when Danny first encountered it, it's just so adorable. But when it gets feral, it turns into this giant mutt, and it just with glowing red eyes and a deep growl. It's just like a shift. And I like that sort of thing, and I kind of like that. It's nothing great, but it's just, again, at the end of the day, the dog is kind of a tool in this regard, but I think really the biggest strength is just kind of how the episode doesn't really offer, is kind of what the episode is. It is a bit of gray, and it is sort of a gray area. You want Valerie to be on Danny's side, but given the circumstances, it's not something she's willing to do at the moment, so it is, again, just kind of somewhere in the gray. You don't know. And I think that's actually some interesting storytelling that I feel could be expanded on later. As such, on the whole, I think the episode is good. I think the episode's all right. It's a fine episode that I think is a nice beginning for a story arc for Valerie. Yeah, I think that's really all I can say. Just fine episode. I like seeing what they're doing here. That they leave it open ended, and it just kind of leaves them open, and it leads to the development of a character who up until then was just kind of there in the background. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. But thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I will see you next week. Take care.